In this video, I'm going to talk about how to create a very simple 4-layer vertex blending setup using material layers inside of Unreal Engine. This is a super cool way to do it, as you can kind of get a lot of creative freedom, and it gives you a very modular end result where you can customize this way further than what we're going to kind of cover. But we're going to just go through how to get this actual little blending to occur. If you've never heard of vertex blending or using vertex colors to blend your materials together, essentially it is data that's stored per model. And this is great because it means you can have larger areas in your environment that are using a seamless texture and blend them using a painted brush, as well as have modular assets that have the same texture and then customize them between each asset or between each model that's in the scene. Let's get started. Let's start by first understanding what we need. We will need a series of textures that are our materials. So this method is going to show you how to have 4 layers essentially on top of one background layer. So you could have 5 unique textures here as well. On top of that, you will need an object that you are going to be painting. Now this again can be anything, it can be something complex. The biggest sort of rule with this stuff is that the data is stored inside the vertices, right? The vertex. So if we have a look at this one here, this is just something I've taken from a modeling program, and we just go to a wireframe, you can see I actually have quite a few more cuts than you'd obviously need for a flat wall. The more you have, the higher detail you'll be able to paint in Engine. It's kind of up to you to decide for your project. Do I want more cuts for higher detail textures or painting here? Or do I need less vertices so that my game runs better, but I still want a little bit of customization, right? You're still going to get some pretty cool effects depending on what you're going for. Down here, I have my textures kind of ready to go. So I have 3 materials that I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you how you can kind of have custom variations of these as well. So we're still going to end up with the 5 versions. In here, I've just got a base color, a normal, and a roughness for each. You might have a metallic, or you might have something on top of that, again, depending on your project. I've also got some noises here. So this is a big part of this to make it look effective. If we have a quick look, this is a packed noise map. So this is a red, green, blue channel noise maps essentially. There's just one on the red channel, one on the green channel, one on the blue channel. Again, this is completely up to you, what you kind of need. It's worth noting, just a little side tip, if you're looking for noises and you have access to the Substance package, Designer is a great place to get these because they have a lot you can start with, and then of course you can customize them through different nodes as well, and then export them from here pretty easily. So this RGBA merge is a really great one. I've just put in my sort of 3 maps inside of here, and then I just go down to this one and save image here. And that's what I'm just using inside of Unreal to get this packed noise map. Sweet. Let's start by making our first asset. We're going to be using the material layer system inside of Unreal, which we can start finding by heading to our content browser, right-clicking in the gray space and looking for material here. Inside of here, there's obviously a few things to choose from. We're going to look for material layer and material layer blend. Those are our 2 sort of main components of this. They're a little similar to material functions if you've ever used them before, where they're going to give us the same power as just a regular material, except it essentially separates it out into different assets, which makes it a little more modular, makes it easier to change if we want to. So we're going to start by creating material layers for all our materials. So let's go one material first, and let's show how that's done. I'm going to call this ML underscore, so material layer, and then I'm going to start by doing my just painted metal, right? And then inside of here, we're going to see how this material layer works. There's an input here. We're going to ignore this for now. If you want to learn more about these, obviously look into yourself. This is essentially where you can import from your parent master material into these, and that means you can have kind of custom variations. We have a set material attributes is actually where we need to plug in our maps, and then the output here, of course, is what sends this out to be the final material. So what we want to do is essentially create inputs here and create just basic material setups. So we're going to go to the set material attribute node, and just down the bottom left in the details section, you're going to just hit this little plus for every input you would like. So I only have the 3, but I can add as many as you want, right? So just by default, it kind of starts filling it out. You've got base color, metallic, specular, roughness. I could just get rid of some of these and go from there, or I could just like change the ones. So specular, I don't really want to use. I might change that to normal. I'm not going to use metallic, but this might be worth just leaving here to showcase that obviously that's where you would plug it in. Next up, of course, we just want to put in our textures. So this is my painted metal, which again, I have these 3 texture maps for: base color, normal, and roughness. I'm going to drag these in and just do the regular connection. So this is no different than sort of a normal material setup. So you can arrange these however you want. I'm going to obviously try make this as readable for the video as possible. So I'll kind of move them up here. And then of course, RGB of the base color, RGB of the normal into normal. And then in this case, it's a linear color map. So I might just use the one channel here into the roughness. And you'll see on the left, we have the end result. Now, worth noting here that we could add some parameters. And the cool thing about doing parameters in these material layers is they're going to be unique to each material layer when we start stacking them. So let's make a couple just so we can see them later on. First one I'm going to do is a sort of tiling node. So I'm going to grab a text coordinate node, and out of here, I'm just going to plug that into a multiply. And in the multiply, I am just going to plug in a scalar parameter, which the shortcut is you hold S down and you click on the screen, and it usually typing like a snake with a whole bunch of S's. I'm going to call this my tiling. And then I'm just going to plug this into my B channel of the multiply, right? And of course, it's worth always setting this stuff up. I don't want to multiply by 0 to begin with, so default value should be 1. The slider min, I could let it go down, but I think I don't want it any smaller than it is. And then slider max can be 10, so 1 to 10. Just give me a nice little slider there. And these, of course, need to be plugged into the UVs. So 1, 2, and 3. Before we finish this one up, I also want to add another little parameter just after the base color here, because I would like to show that you can kind of reuse the same material layer and have different versions with the unique parameters that we can kind of set here. So I'm going to do a real simple hue shift node here. And it's plugged into the percentage, which I don't want. I want that into the texture. And then maybe we'll make some room up here. We'll do it up here. And then out of the hue shift percentage, I'll do another scalar parameter. So hold S, select, and this will be my hue shift. And hue shift is kind of a 0 to 1 for the percentage here. I am going to do a -1 as the slider min, and then a +1, just so I can go left or right. It'll be a little bit nicer. So hue shift, default value of 0, so it doesn't change the color. And then that's now my base color, my new one. So this is kind of one and done. So we save this, and then we move on to the next one. So I'm going to go back here, and I just repeat that same process for every unique material I would want. So if I go back in here, material, and then I go material layer, and this one might be my metal. So I'll go like ML, and I'll say base metal. And then I would go in here and repeat that exact same process. So I'm going to skip ahead here because it's nothing too new, and then I'll show you kind of what I got. Wonderful. So I now have 3 material layers. I've got my painted metal one that you saw me set up. I now have base metal here as well. And then I've also got this rust one. So these are now outputting unique textures. It's worth noting at this point, like you could make these a parameter and then have just one sort of general base material layer that then customizes each time you put in the maps. I think usually you're going to have more unique parameters for each one. So there'd be specific stuff to the paint, maybe for the metal, for the rust, whatever you're kind of doing with this Vertex painting, it's going to be up to you. Now I have these 3. What we're kind of missing is essentially how they blend. So we're going to be able to stack these on top of each other. And then each stack, essentially each layer is going to have the chance to be blended with a blend asset. So we need to create one of those. So we're going to go back here. Right click again, and we're going to look for material, and we're looking for material layer blend. So we're going to grab this one, and we're going to call this material layer blend, MLB I'm going to use, and we'll call it Vertex blend maybe, right? Or Vertex paint, whatever you kind of want to do. The cool thing about doing it this way is once we set up just the one Vertex blend, we'll be able to kind of just use it for all 4 or 5, which is a little bit easier than using material functions or just straight up materials. So MLB Vertex blend, and I'm going to open this guy up. This again, very similar sort of setup. You're essentially getting the input layer from the bottom and top. So whatever kind of comes in or wherever it is, if it's on top layer, it's going to be this output, bottom layer, well, other way around, sorry. I just read them completely incorrect. And then you have the alpha. So this is similar to your lerp nodes or your blend material attributes inside of a regular material. We just need to plug it in here. Now, what we're after, of course, is utilizing our vertex colors. So we're going to start with that. We're going to go vertex color, and we're essentially going to be using this. And we could plug this straight in, right? Just straight away, whatever one we wanted to use, but we want to make this as modular as possible. We also want to make sure that it is not boring. You'll find if you just use straight vertex colors without putting it through some sort of maths with a mask or a noise is what we're going to use, we're going to get kind of pretty poor results. So I just have a quick demo to show of what the difference of why we're going to set up this next section. Here's a basic vertex painting setup where I'm painting black and white, so it's very obvious. This here is what we get by default, right? It is very geometric, and we can straight away actually notice exactly where the vertices are, right? You can kind of see the green dots there appearing on the screen. So when I paint, we get these gradients that are pretty ugly. They're very triangular because it's going to find the triangles of the mesh, and that's not what we're after. What we want to do is essentially run the gradient here, passing it through a noise pattern or a noise mask, and that's going to give us some pretty cool results. So let's have a look at what that might look like. Here is that exact same paint that I just had before, but this time we're actually using a mask on the gradient, essentially with a little noise pattern, and we get this really nice lockdown result. And this is cool as well because it means we can have a lot lower resolution of our painting itself, but still get some pretty cool looking stuff here. Another thing that I'll show right now, because it's going to be harder to see once we get the proper colors on, is that noise can be anything. So I'll just switch it over. And again, without even changing the vertex paint that I already had here, by running this through a different noise pattern, I get a very different result. So this is what we're going to want to set up. So let's go do that now in our material layer blend. So inside of our material layer blend now, we want to set up that noise setup with our vertex color essentially. We also want to try be as modular as possible and add as much customization as we can. Of course, you'll be able to take this further if you want, but I'm going to kind of go over the core fundamentals of what you'd probably need here. So straight away, we have the option to take the vertex color input data, which is RGB here, red, green, and blue. And then this is the alpha channel. We want to use all four, and we want to be able to choose which one to use. And this is because when we do each stack of our layer, we're going to have to change this value. And to avoid having to have a unique vertex blend, like a material layer blend asset, we want to be able to choose here. So straight away, what we're going to do is we're going to take this. This one here is RGB. It doesn't include the A. So we're going to have to do an append vector, just this one here. And then you're just going to put this into here. So now this will be an RGBA, a vector 4 out of here. Next up, I encourage you to put a switch here that is going to let us choose between having a inverted vertex color and a regular vertex color. The reason for this is I usually prefer the inverted, and that's mainly because if we just have a look at a fresh asset here over on our just wall, and we have a look at our mesh paint, if we just look at the RGB here, which you can visualize, this is what most assets are going to be imported with. You can overwrite this, you can make them kind of clean themselves out and have nothing, and that'll let you paint them on by default. But usually it's better to set it up for the defaults. That means it's going to be working a lot better in every single project. When I paint here, I essentially want to be deselecting or taking away from the existing paint, because by default, all these values RGBA are all one. So they're already painted everywhere. So really, we would rather paint them off. So we would go here and we'd erase them like so. And that's when we're going to actually see our blending occurring. Sometimes you'll find that's what you want. If you want to kind of stack things and then you're actually more about taking them away, you can do that. So heading back to our vertex blend asset, we are going to then use a static switch to choose between a negative version of this, so a inverted, and then just the regular version. So if we search here for a static, spelling horribly, static switch parameter, this one here, this will give us a true or false input, and then we have a default value that we could then tick on and off, right? So we can kind of choose. So we're going to call this inverted. And by default, I would actually like it to be turned on because personally, I like to use the inverted one more. That means if it's true, we want the inverted one in the true. So This by default here, we're going to take out of. So after we've appended, we're going to do a 1 minus. This is the invert node essentially inside of materials, and that's my true. And my false is just the same thing, just without the invert node. So now we get this little guy here, which is cool. Everything else should be kind of fine. Let's give ourselves some space. Next up, this will kind of already work. Like if I plug this in right now, we absolutely could start using this. It's just, it doesn't have that nice noise pattern. So we got to do a little bit of maths just in here. And it's pretty simple maths if you get your head around it. We're going to start by putting our noise texture in here. And we might as well just use the one we have. But we will give ourselves the option to change this as well, right? So straight away, just by putting it in here, it will be a linear color because it's black and white, right? It's a 0 to 1. It's packed in my case, but I have picked it up here as linear color. I am going to just right click on this and convert it to a parameter. And then this will be the noise texture. We also will want to have the ability to choose between RGB, and that's so we can use pack maps. And we probably would want a tiling node here as well. So let's maybe quickly grab that guy, text a coordinate, and we're going to plug this into a multiply, just like we did before. And out of here, a static, a scalar parameter, sorry. And this will be my tiling for the noise. Maybe it's worth writing noise tiling in case you did use something else on top of it as well. And that will go into my UVs. Now, out of this, we obviously don't want this to be default to 0. So we want this to be 1, and I'll go 1 and 10 here. Perfect. Cool. So now with our noise texture out of here, we are getting the UVs and we've got the tiling as a little function, which is awesome. Then we want to be able to make sure we can select any of these. So I'm going to leave out the alpha one. A lot of the time your linear color maps aren't going to have alpha anyway. You might just pack 3 noises. You probably can, but it's like probably not worth the effort here. You could work it out if you wanted to. I'm going to go from here and we're going to give ourselves the choice. So to get our choice here, we're looking for a channel mask parameter, this guy here. So channel mask parameter is going to let us choose which channel to take from, and that's going to give us unique masks. So with this one here, parameter, of course, we're going to call this our noise texture channel. And that will let us choose between red, green, and blue, right? You can kind of see the little drop downs. It does have alpha as an option here, but we're not going to use it. We could, I guess, chuck it straight into RGBA in case you had it. It still works fine in this case. Obviously, just the A won't really do much for us. Cool. So maybe it's worth just doing it like that. So same thing there. We're actually going to need another one of these guys for up here because we haven't yet isolated which vertex color we're going to use. So we'll go here, and again, we'll look for a channel mask parameter. And this one we're going to call vertex color. And excuse me if you're American, but with a U there. Cool. And that one, again, will default to red, which is great. We'll be able to change this to all of the other ones. So this is how we'll know which one we're going to use per layer for each section. Sweet. So now we've got both kind of setups here, right? Of each, the noise and then the vertex color. Now we have to add them together in a way that only affects the gradient. So if we looked at this one again, it's only this part that gets a noise, right? The center is full white. It's full painted. We want to make sure it's only that. So a little bit of basic maths here. Thanks to Prismatic Dev, I sort of stole this from him. But that is you're taking your noise channel and you're subtracting 1. This will essentially drop it underneath 0. Instead of 0 to 1, it is -1 to 0. So it's all black. It doesn't show up unless we add something to it. So you can leave it like that. Then we're going to take the vertex color and we're going to multiply that by 2. And that is going to give me the ability to pull the noise channel out from those negative values. So if it is full black here in the noise, it's still going to be able to go all the way up to 1, and that will let me have full painted. So now we just add them together, just like so. And it pretty much just turns like a straight gradient into like a nice wiggly one, depending on the noise. And that'll give us, unique looking gradient shapes there. Let's just shift this back again so we can see everything. One last thing we kind of have to do here is we have to saturate it, because if the noise was like a 1, like it's a white part of the noise, and we add 2 to it, it's going to go up to 2, which is over 1, and we're going to get funny sort of masking because it's not going to be 0 to 1. So if we use a saturate node, this just locks it to 0 and 1. You can see here, clamps the value between 0 and 1. It's a nice cheap way of doing that. One last little extra part we want here, just gives us some more control, is a cheap contrast. And this cheap contrast will just give us the ability to control the contrast, and again, gives us another little parameter to mess with. So contrast here, again, we want to scale our parameter for this, and we'll call this our noise contrast. And then by default, 0, and then max, we'll do 10. Really, it kind of stops working like after the couple, like 3 or 4. It doesn't do too much anything, but that should be all pretty damn good. Slide them in 0 to 10, and then that's our contrast. And this is now my result, and that's the alpha there. So again, I might want to move this back here. So we are taking the vertex color, we're inverting it if we want to. We're going to default to yes, and then we choose which channel. So it might be red, green, blue, or alpha. We multiply by 2, we pull it out of this noise, and essentially this just makes our gradient look a lot nicer. And then we are locking it down to 0 and 1, and then we have a cheap contrast node here. So this is pretty much your basic setup. Let's go save, and let's go see how we actually put this all together. Cool, so now we have our 3 material layers, we have our material layer blend. The way we actually use these is we still need just a top level material. So we're going to create one of these guys, and up to you what you call it. I'm going to call it M underscore something. I'd probably call it like Vertex master or something. So this will still be like a parent material, and you can absolutely customize this in itself and then still use the material layers on top of that. But we're going to keep it very basic for this one. So inside of here, literally all we need is one node. We are needing to plug it into this, but this has to be a material attribute style. So we just want to click on the output section here, the result node, and just go down to the bottom left and look for material attributes. Tick that, so we get this little tiny, just one input. Just out of here, you're just going to look for material attribute layers. Just this one straight away that should come up when you start typing material. It's a little blue one, and we can just plug that in right there. Technically, this is all we need to do. This will be kind of like enough. We could make our layers out of this, but it's worth noting that we can set up at least like a background layer as like the default right away. It might be worthwhile. So just to show you that you can do that, you just go down here to the bottom left of this node, and you can see here the background we can choose. So I'm going to look for a painted metal, which is the one I made before, and that is just going to sit as my background. I can also add the default layers here, so it might be worth setting that up. Let's leave it for now. That's plenty. We're just going to go save. Now, to get our layer system, we have to use a instance of that master material we've just made. So the one we have right here. So this is my M Vertex master. And to get the easiest setup for these layers, we just want to make an instance. So again, you can have infinite instances of these, and they could be instances where we don't use these painted, right? We use something else, like it's like wood and stone or something. Maybe it's like grass and rocks. As long as you have different material layers, this now is going to be sort of set up as just something that's very easy to blend between these things. And that's because this is all the setup here. Everything else is tied to the other assets, the layer blends and the layers. So let's right click, let's go material instance. I'm just going to leave it as Vertex Master Instance for now. I don't need to name it anything unique. Of course you can. We're going to double click on here, and then we're going to see the section. Now it'll probably be on details, just because I've been doing this stuff. The section we want is the layer parameters. So just across to the right here on the side. Inside of here, you'll see we have a background asset. And again, we could choose this and we could change it. You'll notice even inside here, you already have the scalar parameters for this stuff. So I could just like increase the tiling of this straight off the bat, and it will start looking nice. I also have that hue shift there. So anything you have per layer has unique parameters, which is very, very powerful. Makes this super modular. To add things on top here, we just click the little plus, right? So if I just add a little plus here, and I go and I create I'm going to use my metal one, so my ML base metal. That is now going to get kind of stacked on top here, which is kind of cool. Inside of here, we have the ability to change some stuff. And if I had any unique parameters in here, I absolutely could change it, right? I've just got tiling, like I've got nothing crazy. But again, this could be heaps of stuff. You could have other noises that are just tied to those, tints on the metal, whatever you need. The interesting part is underneath that, the blend asset. So every new material layer then has a blend asset. By default, it's obviously just sticking it right on top. But this is how we control how it blends together. Now I've got a few in here, but my MLB Vertex blend is right here. There is some defaults, by the way, if you go show engine content that Unreal have given you. Epic's made them as well. There is a Vertex one in here, but it will not have the noise that we set up. So the one we made is a little more powerful. So let's just hide engine content and use MLB Vertex blend. Now, because by default, I have mine set up where you turn off, well, you have it inverted, it will now not show up by default. The first thing we'd want to go check out, of course, is these parameters. You'll notice, though, that they're a little bit annoying to work with. So just before we finalize this stuff, because it is a very modular setup, you should take the time to make this nice for yourself, right? So it puts it into these default things of like vector ones and scalar ones. We can just get them into a nice list of the things we want to change by just heading back out, right? So if we go back to the Vertex blend, so this is the MLB Vertex blend, we'll just find all our parameters here and we can just change them to put them in little groups, right? So this here would be my Vertex color stuff, right? These ones, these two here. So let's maybe change them. So we'll just go here and we'll find the group and you'll find none in here by default. So you just need to make them. So I'm going to write Vertex color. And then I'm going to go to this one and you'll see I can also choose it there. Down here, we'll do the same thing. So these are all going to be in the gradient noise, I'm going to call it. So it's on the gradient, right? It's only there, and then we'll call it noise. And now we can kind of change these guys as well. So this one will be, remember, because we can change the gradient itself, gradient noise, and this guy here, gradient noise, and this guy here, gradient noise. So it's a little extra step, but it's really worthwhile because you'll see now if we go back here, we now just have two little drop downs of gradient noise and vertex color. So it's a lot cleaner, works a lot nicer. It's not hidden in weird sort of spots. So now we can just change these up, right? So we could absolutely change the noise texture to something else. We could change which channel of this noise we're using. Then in the vertex color, we can also select if we want it to be inverted or not. Mine's true by default. We can then also change the vertex color. So let's see what it's done so far before we kind of add some more stuff. So we'll save this and we'll go back out. Now this is the material we want to use. So that is the Vertex Master instance, and I'm chucking it on there. And we're getting the result, right? It's just the background color right now. But because we're using that Vertex blend, we should be able to switch over at the top here to Mesh Paint. We're going to find our paint. I'm going to turn off the RGB colors, and I'm going to start painting here. Now, if you remember what I said before, essentially, I like to paint with the erase color if you're using the inverted. So I would switch it over. You can just hit X here. If you just hit X on the keyboard, it'll like switch from white down to here as the erase color. And then the best way I find, instead of worrying about changing the values here, just use these tick boxes. So channels, you just tick the one you want to work on. So I'm just using red right now because I haven't set any other layers up. I could just go in and start painting, which is awesome, right? So now you can see it's kind of working straight away. So this is where we can also use our instance, and let's maybe kind of grab it on the side here. We can find something like the noise contrast. So it's just this little node, bit cut off. And we'll see instant results, right? If you have a look at the border there, we're making these contrast changes. And then I could change which noise texture. So I could switch over to the green one, difference. And then I can go blue one, get a different one as well. Noise tiling, so we can change how it works. We can make it bigger or smaller. All this really cool stuff, right? We can also do that inverted tick box. So now it's the opposite result, right? We're sort of saying like cover everything. And then when we paint, so this time it would be more like this painting, right? We would kind of bring it forth, which we are, right? Because we're painting the metal right now. So we bring forth the metal as opposed to erasing it. So up to you what you want to do. Now, from here on out, it is just about stacking more here. So let's add all of them and then let's see how that kind of looks. So you would just go here from layer 1, you would just add a new one. So then I would maybe choose my rust, which is this one. I've made a few, so I'm a bit confused with what I've got, but you should only see one if you've got it. And then choose the blend asset again, vertex color with mask. Wrong one, sorry. MLB, vertex blend. And inside of here, change all the stuff. So the biggest thing you'd want to change per layer is the vertex color. So vertex color here, I would go green, right? So now it's rust. So let's see that. Let's kind of do it one at a time. So now when I kind of come in here, I'm still painting my red. So I can kind of bring out this color. And then on top of that, if I go to green, because that's what I just changed it to, didn't I? Yes, I did. We can now paint that rust on top, which is kind of cool. Now, the way I would probably like to have this is I would like the rust to be underneath the paint. So we might have to have like another paint on top, or I should kind of really do this backwards, right? Of having the rust down the bottom. Sort of depends on what you kind of want to set up. The cool thing to note though is that we can actually just change these around. So if I just close these down, what you can see is, boop, I can just change which one goes on top. So this is actually probably better for me, right? So I'm kind of only layering it in a way where the metal is kind of behind the rust, but then it's behind where the other one goes. So it kind of comes through there as well. Yeah, up to you. It's going to work depending on what you need. Now I can kind of go further than this. I can just add more. So remember we set up 4 channels, so I could do 2 more. And this is where I can also showcase the fact that we can have unique, like of the same layer. So I can go here and I can go to painted metal and I can use that blend asset with MLB here. And inside of here, my hue shift, I can just like make it slightly greener or something, right? So we can make that change. Now worth noting, I guess, because I just paused it there because I thought it wasn't working, but of course, because we're using this vertex blend, we're not going to see it here because it's inverted by default. So if you are changing values, you want to make sure it looks correct first before you start blending. You might have just not use this and then, change this stuff here. So I can make like, slightly greener version here. Then I can put on that vertex blend and then I could put another one even on top of that, right? The same thing, painted metal again. And then inside of here, I could change that hue shift. We'll go the other way this time. So a little bit purple, and then I'm going to go vertex blend. Now these vertex blends, I have to go in and just choose the correct thing. So the vertex color, I would want to use for this top one, probably the alpha, and then this one will be the blue here. So inside the blend asset, vertex color, and this will be my blue. And now I've got my full 4-layer blend setup. So from here, we can just change to blue. And this time I'm kind of like essentially putting this on top. The tiling is obviously different than the bottom one, so that's what I would change to get it to fit. But you get the kind of idea here, right? And they're using those noises that I could then change. Everything's customizable. The cool thing is it's just up to making the layers, and then inside of the layer blend one, we just get the one, and that works for everything, which is a really cool setup. Sweet. From here, customize it how you want, right? Everything can be customized further. The parent material can, the layers themselves absolutely can. They can kind of have little bits in between, more parameters, whatever you want to do. Look into this sort of stuff. If you want to take it further, you can like blend things a lot deeper if you would like to. Awesome.